All right, time we call the meeting to order, and I will do a roll call, starting from my left.
Molly Krychowiak is here.
Ben Wynn.
Danielle Bailey.
Andrew Franklin. Okay, we have a quorum here, so I'm going to ask if there's a motion to go into executive session.
So moved. Second.
All in favor on the voice vote?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. We're in executive session.
Did you have a question, Rob? Seriously?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I couldn't tell from this, is it the actual evaluation or is it discussing the process of how evaluation is gonna work? Couldn't tell from the notice.
What do you mean evaluation?
Are you doing the superintendent
Superintendent
evaluation?
evaluation process.
So it's not the actual evaluation?
No,
No.
Oh,
it's
No,
the process.
no, we're just discussing the process. Okay, so we're in executive session.
Are you gonna move or are you kicking me out?
Well,
We're gonna move, we're gonna move.
yeah.
All right.
Look at that.
That's it. I guess right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
that's totally.
No, we're not. We're not.
Yeah,
You
so I
said
have
the open
to.
meeting, so it was sent out an email with the following process.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
Oh, that was such a good idea.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion.
Uh-huh. That's what you figured? See, and I look at it as, well, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Okay, well, I haven't held this in a year and a half, and when I had it for that, all that other time, I never found it, but we are reconvening in open session. And before we do that, I'm gonna ask everyone to stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Before we begin, I just want to remind everyone of our visitor participation procedures, which are that if you have questions on an agenda item while we're discussing the agenda item, feel free to raise your hand after the board's had a chance to review and discuss the item, and we'll call on you if you have questions. But for non-agenda items, that will be visitor participation at the end of the meeting. Also, we are trying things the first time here with our setup. We're glad to be back in person. Please remember to speak loudly and clearly if you do have something to add, and also to bear with us if there are any technical difficulties. Thank you. Okay, so we are back in open session, and we have item E, 1E, which is the motion to approve the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Being done, on a voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries. Okay. Then we have item 2A, new business, approval of policy JICJ, electronic communication and other disruptive devices.
So I'm making a recommendation to the board to add some policy language to our current policy on electronic communication in order to prohibit any recording or sharing of communication from the school building, outside of the school building, using like a cell phone or other electronic device.
Is there a motion with respect to the recommendation?
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for voice vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3 is the consent agenda, approval of financials and approval of minutes. Is there a motion for the consent items?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, on a voice vote, please signify by saying aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Wonderful. Item number 4A, discussion, strategic planning work.
Okay, so I am frantically trying to communicate with my eyes to Ms. Karin. Can you just cast them so that they can talk? So we're trying to do this dual thing where we have somebody zooming in that's gonna talk to us this evening, and we want you to be able to see them here, and then people at home to be able to see them that are logging in. So we're working on getting them up on the big screen. Trial by fire, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a cast, right?
Yeah, I got it cast, but it's just not sharing. It's not showing anything.
So you'll see the big thing.
We can certainly work just off your personal computers. I don't know how people, if anybody's watching at home, would they see us, Allison?
I'm not sure, but we can hear you, so that's great, Peggy.
I got it.
All right, we're almost there.
We can see you.
Okay, sorry.
There they are. Sorry about that.
Okay, so now you guys are on the big screen, so that's awesome. So, in the bottom square is Peggy Black, who has been working with us around inclusive practices and special education and the special ed audit. And then up above her is Holly Press. She's a teaching and learning director in Kimberly School District and does some work around strategic planning. So we've been talking about how that process could possibly look as we get to January. And so I just invited them to have a opening conversation with the board and community about the strategic planning process. So I will turn it over to you guys.
Great. Well, happy first day back together as a board. That's pretty exciting. I'm sure it feels like it's been a long time. So we are excited to have put together a proposal for you around strategic planning. As a former board member, and I have met a couple of the board members, and they know that I am passionate about board work. And I think besides hiring the superintendent, which obviously you've done that big piece of work, now I think the community and certainly your staff want to know, okay, what's the direction? And I think it's just a great opportunity for you to come together as a community and find the pillars of work that you as a district want to do. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to have put together a proposal for you to think about us facilitating that work, because really it's your work to do. And our job is to bring you great data, great information, and facilitate those conversations so that you can actually synthesize the work and deliver to the community and your staff, including your superintendent, where you want the focus to be in your community. So we really appreciate that's the work you're going to engage in now after the first of the year, and hopefully you'll find that we are anxious and willing to do that work. So within the company, I asked Dr. Holly Press to be the one that facilitates this work for you. Some of the skills that Holly have is really to look at that, to look at the work as objective work, because we don't want anything to be a bias that we bring to the community. We really want you as a board to get solid information, solid data from all your constituents and your staff, so that you have the information you need to really deliver the strategic plan to Allison. So Holly will help synthesize that work and really facilitate you as a board coming together around your strategic priorities. So that's kind of in a nutshell, that's kind of where we plan on going. The need really came out of Allison talking to her staff about the fact that that both budget and planning and decisions in the future really need to be made around what you as a board see as the most important work. So I'm going to ask Holly if she would just talk a little bit about the process that we're going to use in order to get information to you. And then we'll just take some questions if you have some questions for us. So Holly, would you talk a little bit about the how we are going to do the work?
Absolutely. Thank you, Peggy. And thank you to all of you. It is nice to meet you from a distance tonight. Peggy said her passion is board work, and actually my passion is around setting direction. And so this is something I always think that it's so kind and humble to be able to say, and this is where we're going. It's just a respectful thing to do. So you guys engaging in this work is a wonderful thing for your teachers, for your community, so that everyone understands this is where we're headed as a district. So I like to think of our strategic planning approach as this consistent back and forth of listening and then analyzing. And so analyzing both that quantitative data, looking at financial information and test scores and all of the different quantitative parts that you have available to you, but then also listening to your constituents. And we've already started to strategize those students and parents and administrators and you as board members, and then teachers, core teachers, special ed teachers, elective teachers, support staff. We'd like to get voice from everybody, either in small group or in large group, virtually, in person. So we begin by talking to lots and lots of people and just listening for that qualitative data and understanding what is it that your community wants to see? What do they love? What is it that they'd like to see change? And hopefully, after doing that back and forth of listening, we can come back to you with some very clear, these are the themes that emerged from listening to everyone and from analyzing that data. And we bring you those themes so that you can start to talk about what are our pillars? What are those big rocks or those focus areas that we as a board want to see our district work on, and hopefully in 5 years see some significant improvement. And then we continue that back and forth of people talking and then listening and then bringing you back that analysis until we get to a place where what we've proposed is that we can help you with a very high level, a very directional 2-page, I call it 2-page, but it could end up being 4 pages, a bifold, however you think of it. But it ends up being a concise document that sets direction that then your principals can take back to their buildings and they can do more granular action planning off of that document. So you're really setting that high level direction, and then they can have the autonomy to make that work where they are working with the teachers and the students every day. So that's the process that we engage in. And I also like to think of it as you have these 1,000 arrows in a district and they're all pointing all over the place. And the goal is every day we work to get those all pointing in the same direction. And that's what this process should be able to do for you. Peggy, is there anything that you want to add to that?
I think that kind of sums it up, but I would really be curious if you have questions, board members, about the process and the outcome and what you'll have at the end.
I have a question about the focus groups and looking at the document on board docs. And one of the first bullet point says that you'll interview representative students and parents. My concern is there are parents that are involved in the district. They're on different committees. How will you get a representative cross-section so that every subgroup is represented in your focus group? And I'm really talking about the parents that we don't see at board meetings, the parents that don't send us the emails, the quiet majority that we don't hear from.
You know what? I love that you bring that up. And really, that's going to be your work with Allison. You're going to tell us who needs to be invited. And I think, and then together, the invitations will go out. But really, that's going to be the work of your district office, bringing you the recommendation for parents. However, you know, we're willing to interview whoever wants to be interviewed. but it has to be manageable, of course. So that'll really be the work. If that's directed to Allison to make sure that there's a good cross section, then she'll use all of her resources in the community, parents she knows, parents she doesn't know, in order to get a great list of parents so that we can invite. And then all we can do is invite and hope they come, which is why, as Dr. Press said, we want to make that available through virtual. You know, we're finding that even though we can be face-to-face, a lot of that can be a 15 or 20-minute virtual that a parent could do with us, where before they'd have to drive to school and wait if somebody's running late. Or so hopefully virtual will really help that parents really will take our invitation. And so part of that is we'll help write those invitations and run those past you to make sure that you think as a board like that really says what we want it to say. It's really, we're just helping you facilitate that process. So did I miss anything, Holly?
No, I think you captured everything that I was going to say. So thank you.
All right, thank you. I have a question.
Yeah.
So I guess for Holly, since you would be the point person, sounds like, right, doing this planning with our district. I'm not familiar with some of the reference districts the references you provided in terms of districts, but do you have experience working with diverse districts like ours? What is that experience like? And does that impact your approach to strategic planning at all? Does that, I guess that's my question. What sort of background or experience do you have working with like a more diverse district?
We've had districts of all different shapes and sizes that we've worked with. And I think the important thing that Peggy mentioned before is that you always want to bring a non-biased approach into your strategic planning. And that comes both in the form of making sure that you get to that cross-section that we talked about, but also that I don't bring preconceived notions. I don't presume to understand who you are, what it is that you want to do, where it is that you want to go. My job is to listen and to hear from all those different diverse voices so that I can bring you what your community has said. And then it's the board that actually goes through the information and tries to figure out how to make that fit into the equity picture that you have already crafted as a district vision. Peggy, is there anything else you'd want to add to that?
So I, again, will help direct the work. Holly will be doing the direct work, but Holly sits on national boards at a very high level that are related to, yes, teaching and learning, but obviously equity as well. And so is very used to working with a very diverse groups of teachers. In her role as assistant superintendent, she oversees all the teaching and learning, and has done that in both a very large diverse district and smaller districts in private school settings. So I think you'll find that she has a very diverse repertoire. If you want more information about that, we can certainly send you more references and different references. But thank you for asking that question. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I have a logistical question for you, Allison. Is that okay?
Yeah.
In like soliciting this proposal, did we solicit other proposals, and do we have to sort of like according to our purchasing policy, when something is over a certain amount, right, we need to solicit multiple bids, but I don't know if that applies to something like consulting services. So I'm wondering if that's
In our current policy, it doesn't. It's just for capital improvement projects, but it is something that I don't know if you guys are in the process of talking about, and it just never.
is that why I have a
I don't know.
memory of looking at it.
Yeah, I don't think that we
But the
ever mandated,
policy DJ, our
Yeah.
purchasing policy. Is
Yeah,
that-
the one that I found was just capital improvement projects.
We have
So I
a
don't know.
purchasing policy. So,
Yeah,
okay,
we
well, I
did
guess
pull
that's
that
what I'm,
Mhm.
okay. Well, no, I guess I'm just, if you're saying it doesn't apply to this type of service,
Yeah.
that's what I'm asking.
According, when we talked about this last session with Teresa, we were talking about purchasing policy within, like Jim having to purchase big bulks of stuff or things that were material for school.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily,
That's
as
kinda
far
how I
as
read
we
it.
understood, that it had nothing to do with, I think because this is gonna come through the board can reject or not,
Okay,
no matter what, that she can't just do it, or sorry, she,
Right.
but the superintendent can't just do it on her own. And we will accept whatever she does, but in regards to that policy, it was more of
okay.
Jim has to buy a whole bunch of toilet paper and we can't put a limit on it because he buys it bulk.
So the policy that would apply to soliciting consultants, or there is no policy about soliciting bids from consultants, as far as we know.
And I think, and within that, I think that is addressed as a management thing where she or a superintendent should always bring those kind of things to the board because it affects our school. So we've never had a big issue about that. It's always been brought.
But
Am I-
it's technically discretionary, then if there's no
Not
policy.
really. Well, it isn't, but
Okay,
I'm just saying, some of this, we have to have faith that our superintendent brings it in, but also, as soon as she did that, we stopped it right away because it never got brought, so
I feel like this is something we talked about at the retreat. I feel like
Right.
this is one of those, yeah.
Well, and the other
that's
part
why I
of
had
the
the question.
right, and the other part, Danielle, is that's why I wanted them to come tonight, because then we can bring it back in December,
Okay.
and if we have further questions, we can bring it to committee.
Okay.
So there will be
So
multiple
my
types to dig
follow-up
into it.
question then
Yeah.
would be, what led you to selecting, because I know these, Peggy, we're working with you
Mhm.
for our
That would be
special
good.
education,
And that would
right?
be it.
So
Yeah.
so that's what I'm wondering, why.
Mhm.
Can
So
you
it was
just elaborate?
basically conversations with Peggy around strategic planning work and recommendations for somebody to facilitate work. So yeah.
All right, is there anything else?
this is just a discussion item.
Yeah.
for
Yep.
No,
If, we do have a hand up, if you could stand up.
And there.
Carl Bennington Cross, 909 West Acacia Road, Glendale, Wisconsin, 53217. Very simple question. Someone just mentioned that this issue of strategic planning would go back to a committee. If someone's interested in attending that committee, which committee is it?
Probably curriculum.
Probably.
I think.
We don't-
Well, that's on the agenda too.
It'll be on the agenda, whatever it
So we
is.
just have to watch all the agendas for all the committees and see, strategic planning will come up on one of them. And then we'll know which meeting to go to, right?
Actually, later on this agenda, we're talking about committees and what goes where. So that's actually something that we're talking about as well, is being more clear about that. So that people
I
know.
think people will be interested in this,
Yeah,
but when we hear we have to go
absolutely.
to a committee meeting,
Yeah,
we just don't know what to go
Yeah.
to. So, just.
Yeah,
yeah,
it'll be
Okay.
clearly.
yeah.
All right, then I think we'll move on to our next item.
President?
Oh, sorry.
I would ask if we could move the equity conversation. We have a guest, or
Yes.
if we have any questions, I would prefer he's waiting.
Mhm.
If we could move it up and then we can go on with our business.
I mean, I guess, well, we approved the agenda previously, but I entertain the motion. that-
I move a I
Yeah.
ask for a motion to change the agenda so we can move that equity piece to the next week.
A second,
I'll second.
okay, any discussion? On a voice vote, all in favor? Oh,
I'm just saying, thank you so much for your
I know,
presentation.
I was gonna say.
I was going to, I wasn't gonna let you go. I wasn't gonna let you go.
You. It was nice seeing some of you again and meeting the rest of you. We appreciate it. And we look forward to any questions that come up for the December meeting. It's no problem hopping back on and answering some questions. And hopefully after the first of the year, we can start that important work for you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Look forward to it. Bye.
Bye-bye. If there's no further discussion, I'll do a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Right.
Motion carries. Okay. Next item is on to the equity.
We had a chance to talk during our policy committee meeting about a proposal. And then after some further discussion as a group, we streamlined that down a little bit. So you see it on your agenda. So we wanted to talk about just some first steps. And thank you for coming tonight. We talked about first steps as well, because you joined us in the last committee meeting. First steps for the work for the equity ad hoc committee. So I don't know if you want to you want to start with the kind of
No, well,
introducing
I'll
it?
start with what I have to say first. So in getting this, just some background, because some of the committee members may not know what the background behind how we got to where we are now. We originally had a conversation where Danielle and I met with Ms. Weiss and Lindsay, I'm sorry, I don't want to call you by your first name. What is your last name? What?
Johnson.
Johnson, that's it is. And we had a discussion on what this kind of equity committee would, how would we do it? How would we form it? What are the procedures, how we're gonna get it started? And the one thing we did was at the beginning of the year, we put out a survey to see kind of what was going on with our school and our parents. Then Danielle and I went around and tried to get as many RFPs as we possibly could in regards to this work. One person returned it. A lot of people said they were super busy, or now, especially since this is equity, everybody's talking about equity right now. Some of the people who are involved in this work are super busy or super booked. That's how we got to Amelia De Torre. I do work with him on Turner Hall. There's nothing to do with that. Emilio used to be with ACLU, and his team and the proposal of his team. Emilio has done training here at Glen Hills before the pandemic. So I knew he knew kind of what the school was about. The other 14 members, 2 of them are Glendale residents. One is Molly Collins, who actually works for, she used to work for ACLU, and now she is, I don't know if she's president, but she's heavily involved in NEPA at the Nicolay school system. Then there's Dr. Rob Smith, who is a professor at Marquette, and he is also a Glendale resident.
Chair of the Human Rights, Milwaukee County Human Rights Commission.
Right, as well. And then we also have Dr. Amber Tucker, who is a professor at Cardinal Stretch. So none of this was anything like personal or I get no gains out of this. It's just that he has done work in this. And they have written books and done some things, you know, that made them a good fit, even though we only got one proposal. The second part of this is in their proposal. This is the proposal that they did is number one, to start meeting with the people who wanted to be on this committee and decide where and what our steps are going to be. So instead of them telling what our steps are going to be, they wanted to make sure that the committee decided what the steps are going to be. Now, they had some suggestions like community meetings to have discussions about equity and inclusion. Then after we actually tell people what equity and inclusion is and educate them on what that is, now what does the policy look like to the community? And then what would happen then as we work through that and they have a working piece of something, it goes to the policy board. The policy board would work it in with Allison, because these are only suggestions. These are not anything that we have to take, but this is suggestions from our committee, almost like the strategic plan committee wants to do. And then that would work through to the board. So that is the way we did it. We need to, and then the other piece that we talked in the policy meeting is somebody was worried about like the pricing on what each individual thing is, but if we don't know what we're gonna do, because we haven't worked with the group to see what we're gonna do, he gave a range of how much it was going to cost in the proposal. But until we meet with the group, we don't know what we're gonna do. And until we have approval for them to meet with the group, we don't know what we're gonna do. So that is how this all came about. This is very much an ad hoc with a strong community lens. And community is anybody who wants to, who is a taxpayer here, or who has a tax interest in here, or has a student here. So, you know, anybody can be part of what they're paying for the school. So that is kind of the lens that we went through this. It is really going to be community driven and making sure that we get a lot of people in here to understand what equity is, what inclusiveness is, and understanding that before we try to tackle a policy. So that is, I just wanted to explain this. Some of, like, I know 3 of you have never had any of these discussions, because if we were just trying to put it together, and you need to know where this came from. Now, do you have any questions of me? And then you can.
I'm curious as to who else was received or was sent the RFPs besides this group?
Oh, I solicited from a few folks I know doing equity work, but didn't get any official proposals.
I have 2 that Michelle Bryan, who's done work for Homestead, and it's not Homestead, and Hartland or Hartford, whichever one is that way.
Okay.
She just didn't have time. I looked around, I think I asked Emilio to give me some names. I don't remember those names because they never panned out, but I think we asked 6 people at least. 3 said they were this group, and 2 others said we will get you a proposal. But every time, we were supposed to get these proposals in September, and then we gave them an additional time in October, and then finally we got it at the end of the top 1 release. So we did try to do our due diligence. Also, in this work, you will probably not get a group that I don't know or have a personal relationship with, just because of my outside work and what I do. There is not anybody pretty much in Milwaukee County that does equity work that either I don't have a personal relationship with, or that I don't know of their work, or they know of me.
I've worked with Emilio and Rob both on the board of True School, and then Rob and I both sit on the Milwaukee County Human Rights Commission together. And I've had some interactions with Molly Collins, who works for the ACLU, doing some volunteer stuff there too. So I definitely can vouch for the competency of all the individuals who submitted the proposal. I was very pleased that they were willing to provide that proposal. Can I add a couple details to the process?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So just a couple of things to add on is that we solicited interest in the committee. I think there were 20 plus responses. Does that sound right? About 20 plus staff. I think, Lindsay, do you know? I think, anyway, don't quote me, but I believe there are about 20 plus staff, families, board members, et cetera, interested, who said they were interested, filled out that survey. When we solicited that interest, the way that we described the committee was we told folks we'd be looking to identify areas we could improve or create equity, access, inclusion in our district. We talked about reviewing current systems, policies, practices within our district, and drafting and presenting recommendations to the school board and administration. So that was sort of how we presented the work of the committee. But I agree with Tamika that we want there to be a strong community lens and focus on that as well. The other piece is that in the policy meeting, I had asked to talk about breaking out the initial work, which is what you were kind of talking about. So this initial meeting with the committee to develop a roadmap and like goals and a timeline. So I thought that it would make sense to have that broken out from the proposal so that the board could say, yes, we approve doing that piece of the work with the committee. And then from Emilio and the group working with the committee, they would also then be able to change anything about that sort of overall proposal, right? If it needed to be to sort of complement what the work you would do with the committee in the beginning, right? And that would be a secondary piece that we would approve once we had that roadmap and like a very defined goal or idea of what the tangibles would be for this committee. So those are those are just a couple of things I wanted to add.
Okay. I have a question. Jenica, I'm gonna put you on the spot for a minute. So in my experience as a board member, I know that there's been equity work. Has a district in the past ever had a consultant come in to do work with the district, like Elise Fertura with their ICS? Has she?
Dr.
Oh,
Pepper.
yeah.
Yeah.
We had for sure.
And it was for the purposes of the ICS framework. It wasn't.
Yes.
Okay. So why did we stop? Why are we not following up with that? Did she finish her work here, and is that why we're going in a different direction? I guess it's a two-pronged question for you. Did she finish her work here and did we follow through and the district follow through with that process?
The work's never done.
Right,
So
well, I know. But we know with
But when-
Elise, she comes in, we do the work and they're followed through.
Yeah, through the cornerstones.
Right.
So we did work through the cornerstones. Steve Rogers also supported that work as well.
Okay,
He worked, partially, for ICS outside of the district, but then he also brought a lot of things to the district.
okay,
And then COVID hit.
got it.
And then the principals kind of picked up some of those pieces, but it didn't cover the community or the board, really.
Okay,
So those are some missing pieces that we have. And it sounds like this committee, right, is a little more focused on community, is what I'm hearing, and engaging the community in some of that process. So it was more staff focused when we were going through those cornerstones.
thank you for answering that. I'm just looking at the deliverables here. One of the things says they'll be working with school board staff, parents and youth. So, and maybe this is something you can answer too, but are these going to be blended together so that the language of the ICS frameworks is comparable to or congruent to the language that this group is going to be working on? So it's kind of a common language, common themes. When we talk about non-negotiables, will they be married together in this process?
Sort of, and that is the key to that. This whole process is, they did the other work that was done in the lens of education and being educationally focused on equity. This is more societal equity pieces. And I'll give you an example what we're talking about. So there's we have a lot of parents who are stay-at-home moms, right? They stay at home, they take care of their kids. They don't have some of those no, just well, please don't assume what I'm gonna say. But a lot of people who go to jobs, they have some equity training, they have some different stuff that they have to take with their corporations or companies. And then these moms don't get this training. And then some of the stuff that they may not even know that is implicit or biased or something like that, they can get that training here. And it has nothing to do with the school, but it affects the kids, the relationships between what their kids doing and what their friends are doing, and how they may be biased in their own homes or something like that. So it's a broader thing than just school. And once we show equity all around, from the teachings of the school to community equity that knows, then what we're going to do is come together with the community part. We bring it to the policy board, and that is where the school gets involved in it and says, this is right in line with what we've taught before, or this is not in line, and we need to see what we can work on. So I think it's still twofold for right now, but when it gets to the policy committee, that's when we blend this all together. And then that's when it gets brought to the full board. So I think it's not just a process that's gonna go boom, boom, boom. This is gonna take a lot of work. And then, especially since we don't know necessarily what the school, how the school itself is gonna be bringing, because we don't have a strategic plan, or we'll be doing a strategic plan. So it's almost like we're gonna be parallel working together. And eventually, we come together to say, this is what societal like impacts outside of school is. This is how we do it inside school. And then we will come together with the most brilliant ever equity plan. So we will be a model. That's where my goal was. And that's the way I think we had talked about it previously. And I think I started this conversation with our previous superintendent. I think even before you got in, we've been trying to do this work for 3 years, Andy and I think at least 3 years, we've been trying to get this going. And then we were almost there, and guess what happened? Pandemic, because we really were getting ready to do some work, facilitating work with the gentleman who came in and gave us that, I can't remember, he flew here from somewhere.
Yeah.
No, it was the year, that was pandemic year, when he flew in and did equity training with us. And we were gonna bring him back, but we don't know where he is.
Okay.
But that is, and I appreciate your questions, but it is different. And then it'll eventually come together to hammer out.
Got it.
And we are this, and the other one big piece that Allison really wanted everybody to know. This is just suggestions from the community. This is not going, and firm suggestions, because these are the people who are paying our salaries, but it's also, you know, working hand in hand, and then the administration and the board will eventually decide what
Make
policies work
recommendations.
best for our school and our school district. So,
So may I just say, so by the way, I mean, you're right. We wanted to get this off the ground for a while. You know, it takes time to get to this point. I think that a lot of that effort, you know, finally starting to show, and we have that discussion. I'm looking at the proposal and I'm trying to understand a couple of things about it, which I think, and that's why it's discussion now, so maybe we can like fill in those blanks and work on it. First of all, I mean, I look at what's in the proposal, I look what we talk about. And I think we all know that there's an issue that needs to be addressed. We need to make things, you know, we need to bend the arc of light towards equity, you know, to co-opt a phrase. I see that that's what we're trying to do here. I don't see a lot of specific deliverables in here. There's a couple of deliverables up at the top, and it gets a little bit amorphous. I'm a little concerned about that maybe we could develop, you know, some more
but
specifics.
that's the point of the committee, to develop more of it.
Which is why I suggested breaking it up into 2 parts. The first part is identifying goals, like getting everyone on the same page about what this committee plans to deliver, which we know on the macro level are recommendations around equity for the district, right? That can then be taken in conjunction with the strategic planning and other work that's going on. Right?
Yeah, right.
That's what I was asking to have it broken out, because then I think that will help Emilio refine that proposal to say, now I know what your goals are. These are the specific steps we could support you in taking, and here's how we would do it. And I think because of what we've given them in terms of what the committee is, you know, it's still
Farming.
exactly that's reflected in the proposal, which is why we sort of went to this needs to be broken up so that we do that, like the steering committee. It's almost assist and facilitate the steering committee and doing X, Y, and Z that's listed in the agenda is how I would
So,
look at it.
and that's good. And I mean, I think chunking it down makes a lot of sense to kind of break that down. I don't understand exactly how the work at this point would be, you know, build a perform. Maybe that answers part of it.
Can you say that again?
Well, we're talking about an estimate of $12,000 to $15,000, but I don't know how the charges are broken down. If there are any, and so maybe we can get some more detail with that as we go.
But that will all come when we know what we want to do. If, like, for instance,
I agree with that.
And honestly, whatever it ends up, I mean, I'm saying these things that I'd like to see kind of directly specify it, you know, to get more specific. And the other question I have is, and I don't know a better way to ask it, but who is the group? And who does what is a separate issue. That's something that's got to unfold over time. I get that. But who is the group and who are we hiring? I mean, are we hiring 4 different individuals? Are we hiring one group?
We're one group. So the group consists of Dr. Rob Smith, myself, Molly Collins, and Dr. Andrew Tucker. So it would be an LLC. We'll think of a name, but we've already done this type of work over the course of years for other school districts, for other places. You can Google any of us. I've given equity, inclusion, diversity, and anti-bullying workshops right here in front of that smart board for your entire staff and student body. And also in the other room on tribal lands in most of the cities in the state, as has Dr. Smith. Molly and I wrote a DPI approved and state implemented book on anti-bullying, equity, inclusion, diversity. And Dr. Amber Tucker teaches this as a doctor of sociology, especially focusing on trauma, racial trauma, equity, inclusion, and diversity, both at an educational level and how to implement it systematically. And both Dr. Smith and I can work in whatever capacity you want to align with DPI standards in your own school.
I guess what I'm getting at is, I mean, are you 4 people who always do work together and only, you 4 people, or are you this group, for this time only? And I hate to say it this way, but who are we sending the check to? Are we sending it to an organization or a person?
Be an LLC. It would be us. It would be the 4 people that are listed there.
Yeah.
And we can formalize it as a LLC.
Okay.
But it's always the 4 of us. There are no additional people but the 4 of us. And we work together in this capacity numerous other times.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand how everyone works together. I mean, it's not a matter of questioning your credentials, the work that you've done, or, the amount of work you've been doing in schools or education background, anything like that. I'm trying to understand your entity.
Sure.
So that helps, but it's ultimately those 4 people.
It's ultimately 4 people.
And so we'd be consulting to these 4, okay.
And depending on, and also I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it depending on what particular topic we're talking about, one person's expertise will come in more than another one. So that is when they talk about 4 people, it's not one person with experts on every single thing, even though they're close to it. But if we are talking about trauma and equity, obviously Dr. Tucker would be the one to lead that discussion. If we're talking about bullying and other stuff, like it might be Mr. DeTore who is delivering. But it also, and one of the reasons why I like this is because it breaks the work down into 4 different people. We're not like actually taxing people to get kind of worn out on it. And it's all, the work is all divided between them because they have a strategic plan.
But I would be the point person for this. You can always assume that if you have any questions about any of the functioning, how we function, you can always direct them to me. And I live like 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's the only downside is lives in Bayside.
So I have a question for you. Tamika, you talked about a survey. Is that where you would be? I mean, this is kind of this is so broad. So really, how do you tackle this? And what are your first 4 steps in this process?
Yeah, well, I'm considering this a step. I think that as you all are coalescing your ideas and forming what you want to do, that's what we view the initial process to be, is to work with the ad hoc committee to define what you want, to see with whom you want to share input, guidance, and then begin to map that out. So I think broadly we understand what this is, and we've worked on this topic broadly in a gazillion different iterations with many different people. But trying to define what terms your ad hoc EID committee is working on and how that influences your policy committee, that's what we would do. In as much as how you get the ingredients, are we working with board members, are we working with your staff, are we working with members of the community, are we working with the children and other taxpayers in the community? All of that recipe is defined and determined by.
What kind of recommendations have you made to school districts?
Everything from I've co-authored city policies for Madison and advise the Metro Madison Area School District on bullying and t-shirt policies.
And what? Sorry.
T-shirts.
Okay. Yeah.
For the city of Milwaukee and the city of Madison, creating policies on what the use of technology looks like. I was on the governor's advisory panel, Governor Tony Evers' advisory panel for technology, privacy, and consumer protection, where we talked about not just school districts, but what that looked like for all citizens of the state. I've worked with tribal entities to confront bullying. I was a public school teacher in Brooklyn. I was a teacher of the year in District 13 in Brooklyn. That's where I get this incredibly delicious accent from. And I've created policies with them as well. I've created numerous policies for gang intervention work and interacting with gangs, as well as creating policies and working with Rob Smith, who created the Student Bill of Rights for all of MPS, including its charter for accepting and working with Black and Indigenous students. And I was a part of the entire process for that with the Milwaukee Public School directors, as well as representatives from every high school in MPS. I've probably spoken at, I was selected by MPS to co-host their first ever student forums, which they modeled after forums we had created, to get input from all the students of the high schools, granted not middle school, but the high schools, about what they wanted to see implemented to boost student equality, to combat bullying, and to promote equity in all of its forms, not just the ones we may have personal experiences with, but the multi-layered identities that the students themselves bring that very frequently older adults don't know, because how humans interact with one another changes generationally. And we've facilitated those processes as well with adults who then need to come in and learn, as we've, with the approval of the students, reformatted what they're saying in a way that the adults can then adopt it, and then worked with, I've probably worked with every superintendent from MPS up until now. I've done trainings at most of the high schools across the state too, Homestead, Arrowhead, Seaburg, Grafton.
So when you talk about doing work at MPS, I mean, there's work and there's work, and I'm just trying to get a sense, are there comparables to Glendale where you know, gone farm to table and done this kind of work, and you know, you can show, I mean, you can't show the cured society, you can't show the cured district, but you know, you have, you know, something that shows that you've gone the distance with another district or another comparable district. And you said MPS, but when not hearing is that you did this work like this, that you consulted, they've done little bits of this or, you know, some of that. Have you ever done all of this for district?
This is a much smaller district than the ones I've worked with. That we haven't really, like, if you say Metro Madison, you say Milwaukee Public Schools, we're talking exponentially larger numbers of adults and students. So to that extent, no. In a smaller, more compartmentalized way, with smaller educational entities, yes, to create guidance or interactions, to just train. And sometimes there's intersections of the law that the board doesn't understand. So for example, I know on Daniela's team, we do workshops, and I did one here for just what does it mean to have an electronic device, and what are the implications of electronic devices in children. So in iterations like that, yes. But no, this is unique because usually in those places, I was either asked specifically or one of my team members were asked specifically to create things, focusing on specific topics. So I want you to help us with the bullying policy. I want you to help us with a dress code policy. And the process for getting there is similar to what I think you're advocating. The larger process, like the Student Bill of Rights that we did with MPS, that was a lot more organic, and it's what I'm hearing from you is similar to this, because the school board and the students weren't sure what they wanted in this yet. They just knew that they wanted to embrace what the students at the time felt like they weren't getting in their high schools. And so we worked with a year-long trajectory. We worked with recruitment and educating and soliciting the input from students, from faculty, and from parents. And then we worked with the school board and also looking at aligning with DPI where these different things in the Bill of Rights would fit, and then how the students then felt that represented their interests and they felt they were being treated equitably. So, no, the question that you're proposing is unique because what's facing Glendale right now is we've done this in a large way and we've done this in a smaller way, but not quite in this way. I've had these conversations before. I was also a consultant for the National Association of Independent Schools, and so I've consulted nationally on these types of topics with independent schools. My wife is a teacher at university school nearby. That's kind of part of that body too. And so those were more centered on affinity groups, and each of these schools is changing. And so as they are approaching what is included under the umbrella of equity, inclusion, and diversity, and how just language changes, and that's usually been amicable, but a messier experience too, because folks aren't sure what they're looking for. They just know that they don't have something or they need something, but they're just not sure what that something is. So the sticky process, I'm comfortable with that. I mean, the chaotic nature of the socks, I'm sure.
And there's no one size fits all either.
There is no.
You know, so to some extent, for me to ask you if you've done the same thing for us that you've done, you know, for someone else comparable. I mean, it's a loaded question, so I recognize that. I'm just trying, you know, get a sense, because this is kind of a brave new world for us and trying to really, you know, figure out how we're going to, you know, tackle our, you know, concerns. So
I can assure you too that our reputations as professionals, Rob, Amber, Molly, myself, we're not looking to stick a very tight formalized contract with Glendale and then say, well, you didn't say that's not in. We understand that this is a growing organic process. And Rob and Molly are residents here. You know, the children, well, Molly's especially have gone here. I have friends that live here. You know, the Amirs, for example, are longtime friends. So we understand what it's like to work here, and we live here. If our reputations are on this, so if we do poorly by you, then that affects all the other things that we hope.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have any other comments or questions? Seeing no hands up, I guess we will move back to item number 2.
Can I ask a question for you on? So is this going to be on the next agenda what does this look like? 'Cause I don't want, honestly, I'm going to be honest with you. We've been doing this for 3 years, trying to get it through something. It's been pushed back another month because we needed to have this discussion. So what does, in the next meeting, what do you need or what you are looking for that next meeting? If it's just the same thing, like we will just approve it, so, or not approve it, I should say, so we can move on.
Can you do a proposal for those first 3 pieces?
The phase 1, like phase
Yeah.
1 of the work, which would be the introductory meetings, however many that turns out to be, right, with the committee. So to assess and provide appropriate training on equity inclusion for the committee, right? And then to work with the committee to develop goals and then a roadmap / timeline sort of action for the committee, right? So that this obtuse sort of general thing we're talking about then when we come back to the board is a very specific plan. Does that make sense?
Yes, and so long as I can follow up with the email to kind of
Yes.
define like how many people are in the committee.
Yeah.
You know, I understood
Yeah.
that establishing, from what Tamika was saying, baselines of definitions and kind of getting to know what is broadly fitting under EID. So long as we can ask those clarifying questions, I'm happy
Yes.
to get together with the others to do that.
And then do we have to wait?
That,
Sorry, go ahead.
and I would think that cannot be done by our next board meeting, which is December what?
15th, I think.
15th.
Sure.
It's the third week in, I think it's the third week in December.
Yeah.
With like a possible first even proposed date or meeting, like a possible timeline for those introductory meetings, or what you think that work? How many?
That would depend on the.
Yeah, we
the
can
back and
continue
forth
to talk and
conversation.
engage, yeah, but so that we could have that kind of laid out.
Right.
Get going.
This is, and I'm not trying to put, I just want, if we're gonna do this and we see that this is not something for us or this group, then let's scrap it, find somebody else so we can, move on. If this group, you're okay with this group giving us a proposal, then that's great also. And I just want to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
I know a couple of the teachers have even reached out and said, hey, when is this going? We're
Yeah,
ready
people
for
wanna
this.
do the work.
So
They
people
wanna
are
do the
ready to
work.
do the work.
Yeah.
So we will proposal by the next school board meeting with a presentation. And then hopefully we can possibly get the other 3 people here if they can get here on, for their schedules, but then you can get a look.
Or we could
see,
zoom them in like we did.
Or zoom them in, whatever we need to do. It's just, then we can move on.
All right.
I can't speak for their schedules, but.
I said one way or the other.
Thanks, Amelia.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much for
you.
coming. I appreciate your time.
You are dismissed.
Make my dinner taste a little more savory when I go home.
Good thing you don't have a far drive.
All right, then item number 2, be open enrollment process declaration.
So this is just something to think about. I know that in January we declare seats. So we were taking a look at, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but what was shared with me was that typically we only declare for kindergarten. And so I was just looking at some of the numbers. And so if you look at the document that I attached, what I did is I just took a snapshot right now today of our average class size at each grade level. And then I also included per policy what the maximum class size is per grade level. And I just noticed that there were like 4 grade levels where we could potentially consider declaring some seats. Because even if we declared seats, filled them all, and had residents move in, we'd still be like below that maximum class size. So I just share that as like food for thought that you guys can think about. Obviously, when we get to January, you guys decide, if we want to declare seats at any other grade levels besides 5K. But I just wanted you guys to have that data and that information, because obviously it's always good to increase enrollment where we can.
You don't have, sorry to interrupt, K4 is not here. So what is incoming?
I don't know.
We still don't know.
So basically, this is K5 is this year's K4. It's on this document. So this is next year,
Okay,
like what we would
Right.
have in that grade level. So I don't know what 4K is going to look like next year.
okay. Oh, but so this is just this
This is-
year's what we can do.
Yeah,
So one thing that we had, and by the way,
sorry. it's me.
and I'm sorry, I didn't see, let me just add, I think of us two here, we've been probably harping on open enrollment policy the longest. Not necessarily that you and I are necessarily the strongest voices, but you and I, this movement have had a lot of concerns about not having enough, about how Glade takes open enrollment, that goes for our district. So I like the fact that we're looking at this. I guess one question I have is, and I think that one reason why we've rarely taken anything outside people when we've done this is because we're concerned about, this year we have 10 people who are available maybe in first grade. Next year is something going to happen and we're going to have, less availability and then have a surplus. So the concern is at some point, does it cost us money to take people in? And, are we paying for open enrollment as opposed to getting paid for open enrollment,
And
right?
it's a balance, yeah. And
So-
that's something that like Lindsay and I would work through to make sure that there's the benefit.
So I guess my question is, just, 4, it's a big number, but you look at 9 or 10, it's hard to just say there's a group of kids in the middle of the pack, grade wise, there's 9 or 10 openings. It would be hard for us to say in the middle of, that path to add 10 people on, wouldn't it? Or would it?
Kids move in and out all the time. You get new kids all the time moving into the district, so it's not like it's a static group going through, you know what I mean?
Actually, I do, and that's been the debate that we've had. I'm sorry. Ms. Hope.
Yeah, I had this discussion in my head last year. I go back and forth, and one of the reasons why sometimes I am not for doing open enrollment for other, because they don't go anywhere. We educate these kids. If they're going through K4 and K5 and first grade all the way up, they're getting our solid education. But if we get fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, they are literally in our system for 1 year. And then they're out of our system. They don't automatically go to Nicolay, and then they're scrounging to go to other schools, which already as open enrollment, they're going to have to do. If we do this, and I think we brought this up before, we want people to really understand that if you come in fifth grade, sixth grade, there is no guarantee until Nicolay changes their policy or if they want more, that you are going anywhere. And a lot of parents did not know that at the time until they've already gotten into this school district. We are a separate school district from Nicolay. We want to educate our kids fully. I think that going is that's a different conversation, and that has to deal with, I'm talking strictly for Glen Hills. That's why we normally only go for K4, K5, and maybe first grade. And every once in a while, we have an opening for one kid who understands, we'll do it, but I don't necessarily know if I want to bring 10 kids here and they're not getting the full benefit, and they're ended up, straggling along to find a high school.
Yeah, we did talk about being really clear about that to make sure families understand that there's no preference for Nicolay, just in general, being really clear about that, because somebody could come in at kindergarten thinking, do you know what I mean?
Most
That's gonna
people,
lead to.
But they're still getting 8 years of full Glendale-River Hills School District education. I just think it's a little bit different. I mean, and those are the parents that I talked to at that time. Now, I haven't talked to anybody about this for a year because we were in pandemic. And everything. So I'll preface that.
I have a funding question. I know that the dollar amount that we get for a student who open enrolls here is different than if they are a resident, correct? Now, if the student is a student with an IEP, does that number stay the same, or is there a qualified, so it stays the same?
No, there's two different amounts. You get one amount for their regular education and then one amount for special ed.
Got it. And does the amount that we get, because the student is in special ed, does it vary depending on the need of the student, or it's just? Okay.
No, it is the same amount, but they do have in place for districts. So if you have a student that comes in, and this is again for only resident students, is you can do what's called a transfer of service. So if you would take in a student that you're not planning on having, or like if you have to hire a separate staff member solely for that, if an expense the district is not planning on, you can claim a transfer of service. And that is a one-time thing that you can do, and that's what a lot of districts do to help offset those expenses. But it doesn't depend on the needs of the IEP as far as the funding that you get for the open.
Okay.
Can we go back to Tamika's point? So I don't understand I don't have a historical reference for the not being able to open enroll into Nicolay. Is that something that is like on the table for discussion with the district, or
So
how
you
does?
can open enroll in Nicolay, there's just not preference.
Sure, that's
Right, and I don't
that
know, I
part.
mean, that's a
So-
question
so
for.
Let me explain this
Yeah.
very clearly. Nicolay has had 1, maybe 2 openings for freshmen for Glen Hills, Bayside, and Mapleville. I have fought over there with Teresa, because this is a huge thing for Teresa Seams, that she has been fighting tooth and nail to try to get their open enrollment. I think it's coming back up again, and there's a couple of people who, and I can't speak for, I'm just talking community people who want to fight for this to open up. I remember the year that combined, all 3 schools, or all the middle schools combined had 13 kids. And they were pushing to let at least those 13 kids from our open enrollment come in, and they would not even do that.
So it's a numbers thing in general. They generally only have 1 to 2 open enrollment for the
They can
freshmen.
allow a lot more and not lose money. And it's been proven that they won't lose money. They just choose not to for some reason or another.
The argument from them has been that there's no room and that it costs money, which is exactly the opposite of what our arguments typically also, my recollection is that we could prioritize, if we were on the Nicolay board making that decision, I thought that we could prioritize feeder school open
They
enrollment.
could, but they don't have any room, so
my
it
point-
doesn't.
Yeah, I don't
My
know. the
point
history.
is this an area where we should learn or explore if you're going to make a recommendation to push open enrollment in various grades? And we have at least one board member with hesitancy because of that. And I expressed this concern in policy as well, just that. About
I
that,
guess
or
I-
no.
I guess I see, I don't know the history of Nicolay, and
Yeah,
I
I
guess
don't
I see
either.
that as two separate issues, because I see it as, so why wouldn't we welcome students in to experience the wonderful education here at Glendale-River Hills, if that's gonna be a benefit to those students, regardless of what high school they go to?
But I won't use them just for the fact that we need money to prop our numbers. I
No,
will
but we
never
have
do
families,
that.
yeah, we have families calling us now asking.
I
you know,
understand
wanting to
that,
get
but
it to the family,
I
In
understand
those
that, but
grades, like in
like
upper
across
grades?
the board, and we
Such
just
as any
can't, you know.
I
once they
understand
move in.
that in reality, I was a 220 student, so I really do understand that. And there is a real, people want to be in our district. They want the education. Your teachers are just great, both in here in Glendale and Parkway, and people want that. But they sometimes sacrifice the idea for reality, like how is this gonna affect my kid when they have built bonds with these kids? So I think it's not, it's twofold. It's not necessarily our bottom line, but how is this gonna affect these kids emotionally when their parents may not say, or, that they can't go to Nicolay. They have this, I know there's a whole group of all of Jada's friends when she was here in 8th grade. There was about 10 kids that she was friends with, and they were close friends. 2 of them went to Nicolay. And she lost her whole support system, even though we were residents. I'm just saying that happens quite a bit. And I've had conversations with parents where they were devastated thinking that, well, we're gonna hope that, I think until we get a firm answer on at least what Nicolay will do, it does affect us.
And I hear you, I just,
I just don't think it's
we
cut
have
and dry.
families calling saying we want to get it to your district, and so I just wanted to throw it out there, and I'm not saying across the board, Tamika, there's just like, every year it could be like, wow, this grade level is really low, maybe we open some seats.
And that's
here.
what we've
Yeah.
done in the past, where if it was really low, we brought some in,
And that's all I was.
but we
sharing.
have never really done it like all the way up just
Mhm.
because we were low.
Mhm.
I think one year it was like 6th grade was super low, and we brought in like 10 kids.
So just food for thought. Obviously, it's not till January that you guys make that decision. And then the other piece was just letting you guys know that the transparency of the process, I know you guys talked about that. So it'll be posted as an open meeting so that people can attend. Kayla uses like a computer system, so like just that transparency of the process so that people are there when those seats are drawn. That we're working on that piece too. So it's just kind of an update on some food for thoughts. I don't know the history, so, food for thought, and then just an update on the process, so.
Just history wise, it wasn't like Kayla was doing anything wrong. It was just
Oh,
that
no.
make it completely transparent that somebody's there, they see the name being called, and that's it.
But I appreciate, A, being ahead of the curve on this, B, just knowing some process. It's really helpful. I also hope that Nicolay can maybe push things up a little bit this year, which would give us that guidance, but I don't hold on much hope on that.
I would actually just reach out to Teresa Spinks to see what she is planning on doing, because she has been a champion of this particular issue for quite some time. I mean, at least as long as I've been on the board, she's been harping this, and that's been 5 years or so.
Item 2C, COVID updates.
I'm gonna swap spots with Mr. Beckman for a moment, so we can talk about air testing. Yes, because otherwise you won't be on camera, you'll just be a voice.
You're giving him a microphone and a camera.
Hi, everybody here. Real quickly, this is a verbal report tonight. I do have a lot of numbers and things I certainly can share with you if you want to see them. As you know, we periodically do air sampling throughout both buildings. This last couple of weeks, we've been doing it. We've tested both Parkway and here. We've tested every room, including all the offices and spaces and gyms and whatnot here. I'm very happy to say, I'll start with Glen Hills. We have some temperature issues that aren't related to anything but some faulty, some mechanical valves that we are working on. House A is warm, and it's been warm the last couple of weeks, even when it got cold. So we're working on that, but still our CO2 and our humidity levels, and as well as our airflow have been very good in those rooms. And I would like to share it individually and not run through 1,000 numbers here. Okay. But we look at this very closely, and I've highlighted a couple areas that we want to look at. We did Parkway over the last couple of days, so we got a warm day and we got a cool day over there. So there was a cooler day that we tested as well as a warm day. And again, very happy to say that our temperature at Parkway, even with the outside being chillier now, and we have a warmer day today, our temperature range is right in the level. And I can share what the ranges are. We're shooting anywhere between 68 and 75 degrees. 75 sounds warm, but sometimes it's not that warm when you really think about it. We shoot for CO2 anything above 1,000 parts per million. And there's only 2 rooms over there that are a little concerned, and it's an individual issue. I've already worked with Dr. Smith on that. And it's we don't want to cover up unit events with a lot of stuff. We have that in a couple of rooms where the unit events are completely blocked. So we'll work on that. And as you can see, that happens sometimes. And as far as relative humidity, which was always concerned since we're not an air conditioned building over there, right now the relative humidity is right on. You want it between 35 and 65% relative indoor humidity. We look good. Our CFM, which is your cubic feet per minute of airflow, you want that above 13 cubic feet per minute. And we have one room, again, the movement's got everything blocked, is the only room over there that's lower than that. So we'll work on that. But I'm very happy to say right now, we've tested our rooms now 3 times over the last 6 months. We've been consistent, even at Parkway, without having air conditioning. Now, I didn't test it on a very warm day. We tested on a moderate day, 60. It was 60 degrees today. So we tested it on a nice day today. We tested it also last week when it was like 35 degrees outside. So we had some very good numbers there. If anybody's really interested, I'd be happy to sit down individually and go over the numbers with you and just show you what our findings are. This is on a Google Doc also, and we keep record of it. After I'm gone, it'll continue forward. So whoever comes in will be doing it again probably within the next, I'd say 6 to 8 weeks. We'll do about every quarter. Yes.
Just got a real quick question. So that one room, once you clean it up or move stuff around,
We'll see where
it
it comes
should
in.
be fine.
It should be fine because the rooms around it are fine.
Okay.
Do you reassess, do you do another test then in those
Yeah, we'll
rooms?
just go test it. Yeah. We can test in like 5-6 minutes. We get pretty accurate readings in those rooms. Any questions at all? And if you'd like this, you can email me. I'll share it with you.
So you want to go to lunch and go step by step?
I'd like to do room by room and
Okay.
then item by item. So there's 4 items per room.
Can you come to my house?
We have 82 rooms. We have 82 rooms. We can certainly go through that. Each room.
I was just checking because quality time, quality air, quality times.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Please email me if you have any questions.
Thanks a lot.
And then the last thing was just vaccine clinic was really successful. Huge shout out to North Shore Health Department. They were fabulous. They split it for us so that we had some time at Parkway, some time at Glen Hills, and then some time in the evening, so that families could either send in a release and their kids could get their shots during the day with the release, or they could come after 4 o'clock and come with their families. We had some Glen Hill students that were so excited about getting their shots that they ran down at 2:30, and we were frantic because we didn't have releases for them when we realized they were signed up for like 3:45 or 4 o'clock when their parents were going to come. So we've never seen kids that excited about getting the shot. So that was pretty, it was pretty neat. You could just see like hope on people's faces and like smiling families, and just, feeling really good about that opportunity. So we had 39 students get vaccinated at Parkway and over 90 at Glendale. So,
Wow.
and then the health department and like Walgreens and things like that are obviously available too. And then December 6th, same time, same places, they'll be able to all come back for their second dose. So that was pretty successful. Huge shout out to the health department for helping with that.
Skipped over to current number of cases. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, okay, that was not on my notes, and I don't remember adding it.
Can I ask a question about current cases?
Sure.
So I've been getting a lot of, emails. It feels like maybe there's an uptick in sort of student cases we're identifying. We know that the third grade classroom sort of has to go virtual. So I'm curious if we still know that we have not had in-school transmission, or has there been in-school transmission at this point that we know of?
Yeah, so there's an uptick in there. We've definitely seen an uptick in school, and then in meeting with the health department area districts, there's been an uptick in the community as well. So unfortunately, we did have several weeks where we were going like almost 2 weeks without a case. And then the last couple of weeks has been pretty much daily. Third grade, we're definitely keeping an eye on. We did have the one class that went virtual because we basically hit a tipping point where more kids were at home being quarantined. And that was because there was a case 1 week, a bunch of kids were home in quarantine, and then the next week there was a case, so more kids had a quarantine. So there still wasn't any in school, and we haven't had any kids go home quarantine and then become positive, which has been really positive. Well, it's been really good. But I did actually, Dr. Smith and I reached out to third grade this week because the strangest thing is that they're all in different classrooms. So it's not like we're having a classroom where there's multiple. So each time there's been a third grade, I'm calling and I'm like, okay, is this in a different classroom? And they've all been in different classrooms. So far we're not seeing. Some of the conversations with families, some families have said like kids may be hanging out outside of school that are different, and that could be possible. But it's really frustrating because there's not really, like, there's nothing that's showing like a pattern. Do you know what I mean? It's just kind of, and then the other piece that we talked about was that tipping point to virtual being, it could be lots of different things. It could be that more than half classes home. It could be within a couple of days having more than one case in a class, like that could be a tipping point. Or a quarantine student becoming positive, because those would all be indicators that there was potentially spread at school. And we haven't had that yet. So we're just, like I said, hoping for that vaccine and hoping that that's gonna have an impact on the little ones. But yeah, there are still many more kids at school, you know what I mean, able to be at school learning than would like push us to do any different style right now, but there's definitely an uptick in the community. The North Shore was getting really low for burden rate, and now it's kind of climbing back.
Is there anything we can do to track how many students outside of this clinic have been vaccinated with the district?
We can't really track that, but on a case-by-case basis, what the nurse will do is if a kid is in a group that needs to be quarantined, she can look them up on the Wisconsin registry to see if they're vaccinated, because then they don't have to quarantine. So like on an individual basis, only the nurse has access to that information, but she can look up individual kids.
And that was part of the question that I was gonna ask, which is, it's not common for us as a school to go and do this. It's great public service, but we also have to observe it, to make sure that,
Yep.
we maintain confidentiality.
Yeah, so the only person that has access to that is the district nurse, and she's got like a special district password where she can look that up in the Wisconsin registry, just like any other immunization.
Well, so, okay, just to follow up on that though, I mean, we have asked about vaccination status as an optional question of staff or families, right? So is it something we would consider? I mean, no, we're not in that post-COVID world, but at some point, don't we want to understand how much of our student population is vaccinated?
It's interesting because we actually just had that conversation with the nurse around the value of that information. It would be tough because it would have to be only accessible to her, and so then we would just be like having to pull all of this, and it is optional for parents to tell us. So I don't know how valid it would be, and she felt like just being able to look it up on a case-by-case basis was enough for her.
But when
And
we
to not
collect
need to
that,
know.
will we collect that data and aggregate it to like have an understanding at some point or no? She's just,
I mean, at this point, it's not a required vaccine like everything else, so it's
Okay.
tricky. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, all the other immunizations, you know what I mean, are like required for schools, but this one still isn't.
Well, yeah, I mean, all the other vaccines are required, need to either be given out or to have some time valid exemption certificate. So even that,
Yeah.
in the past, I think we've had a very high vaccine response rate for those standard vaccines. If I recall, maybe this would be correct, but I think we used that about 98% who actually been vaccinated. Certainly, a high level of people who responded, on that, which is, it's very good. I don't want to open up the question about mandating vaccines right now. I'm hopeful that, people are doing that, and maybe we'll see some this uptick start to drop. But it's something for us to keep in the back of our mind if it's something we want to approach. And I don't know how I feel about it one way or the other. I just think that's something that we may have to consider at some point. Anyone else? Okay, then we're moving on to item D, the school report card.
I'm getting up.
Do you have to adjust the camera?
I can do it.
No,
I'm gonna do it.
Karen's gonna make sure.
Sorry, this was an opportunity to stand and move around instead of being on that screen, so I'm taking it.
just give me 1 second to share.
Yep, she's gonna share it up on the screen. Board members, you have a copy of the packet. Because I know for some of you, Tanika, we tested that spot, it's a little hard to see.
I'm good. I've been sitting here for a while, so I know.
You need to stay on. And it's only like 62 slides, so we'll be fine.
Awesome.
Did someone order pizza? I toned it down.
I got it.
Thank you.
Oh. You missed us.
I did.
You missed us.
I like being, I like being. There we go. Happening. All right, so we're here tonight to talk about the school report card that was released yesterday, so it went live. So real quick timing around this. So we're gonna go through the report card tonight. So, oh, I'm sorry. Ooh, fast for you. Ooh, fast. I'll just turn. So we're gonna do an overview and kind of talk a little bit about what's new with the report card. And the report card summarizes student performance and student engagement for each school and district and assigns an accountability rating and score. The report card's aim is to reflect a balanced view of performance by incorporating multiple student outcome measures, and these measures are all combined to produce the scores and ratings. So with this, there's a lot of new things for the report card that came out. I'm going to talk through all these things throughout the slides, but just real quick, we added, there was an addition of a narrative of why are we doing that? So the district has some voice. Okay, there was a statement of caution. Why? COVID. Visual design changes. Why? To make it more user friendly. You're really going to like looking at the report card now. It's going to be really easy to digest. A shift into creating target outcome priority areas. And there's no more closing the gaps. And really they did this to focus on the bottom quartile to make the measure more reliable, inclusive, and actionable for school districts, regardless of demographics. And then there also was no deductions for absenteeism and dropout rates to align with the ESSA. All right, so the overview statement that the district shared on the report card, I'm gonna read it to you because I feel it's pretty powerful and I really think it aligns to our vision and really who we are. The Glendale-River Hills School District is a 4K through 8 district committed to developing the whole child academically, socially, and emotionally. We value each child's unique contributions and individual needs. We prioritize equity and inclusion in everything we do. Above all, we seek to foster a cooperative, inclusive, and nurturing environment for students, staff, and community members alike. So I thought that was really our voice coming out in that. I'm sorry, it's okay. All right, so this is the score summary. It's a little different now. You can see up here, we have the district, Glen Hills, and Parkway. And when you look at this, there's a statement of caution on here, okay? So that, and we really need to, it says, please use caution when interpreting scores and ratings. Okay, so we need to think about COVID and the things we've been through. We also had 10% of our students not test during the 2021 school year. And we came back from 10 months of virtual to test. We ran 2 testing formats as well. We ran a different testing for our virtual students, and then we also had our students that were in person who tested across the content areas, and our virtual students came in on a Friday and did the testing. The report card includes 4 priority areas. You can kind of see them over here. It's important to note that they're different. Okay, so it's different scoring for the district, Glen Hills, and Parkway. The report card does achievement, it does growth, target group outcomes, and on track to graduation. Third grade over here, Parkway only has 1 grade level, so then they only have achievement and on track to graduation because they can't show growth, and then they also don't have a target group because they don't have past data. Okay, so when we're looking at getting these overall scores, how they're scoring this is very different depending on what is being scored. So you can kind of see where the different the schools in the district landed. Our district met expectations, and then Glen Hills met expectations. We kind of see over here 69.9. As a district, we were 69.2. So very close to exceeds expectations, and Parkway's third graders exceeded expectations. And which is very different because Parkway seems to kind of flip-flop around because it's that 1 grade level. So the testing is based off of those 80 to 100 students. So here's the visual changes. This is the old report card. This is the new report card. So this was pretty messy to dig into and was really tough to kind of really get into the data. This seems so much more clear, and it also lays out the differences real easy by comparing yourself to the state and what the district is doing. All right, just some general reminders when we're thinking about this. The cell size has to be 20 students. So in some cases, we may have a small cell size of students, or like, let's say our EL population is 7 students. They would be able to put the data out on that. It would be public, because you can kind of see which students they are. You must be a full academic year for achievement and growth. But for the absenteeism and the graduation and attendance rates, you just have to be here 90 days. Growth calculations are a little different. They're not on that year. They're based off of 3 years of data. But because of COVID, it was based off of the 18-19 data and 2021. So it was only based off of those 2 years of data. Also, we have to think about that there's lagged data. So attendance, graduation, and chronic absenteeisms are lagged 1 year. So when you're looking at that on the report card, that's from the 1920 school year. Okay. And then when it comes to attendance, this is also something to think about, is DPI. It doesn't matter if it's excused or unexcused. So when we're looking at some of that data, if someone's out for COVID and they were excused for that, it's still marked as, marked against their attendance. Okay. So this is the front page of the district report card. I'm going to go through this one, just because it's so similar to Glen Hills and Parkway doesn't have all the pieces to it. So I just want to go through and explain some of this. Up here, you can kind of see our student groups. So at the very top, so that disaggregates out what the percentage of the different demographics students we have. So you can kind of see students with disabilities, we have 15.3%, economically disadvantaged 42.1%, if I read that correctly, and our EL students are 2.6%. And here are priority areas again. Something to note on this is that we have a bigger chunk over here for growth. And the reason being is because we have a higher economically disadvantaged group of students. So they weight that higher in the calculations. Sorry, let me turn this way. Let me turn this way. Oh, back. Okay. I got a lot more to say. So over here is the achievement area. So you can see this board numbers on your slides a little better. But when looking at this, this is a comparison against the state. Okay, the darker color is us, the state is the lighter color. And the purpose of this priority area is to show how the level of knowledge and skills students in our district compares to state academic standards. So you can kind of see here that in ELA, we had 68.1, state was 61.4. Mathematics, we were 56.7, the state was 61.3. Above the state in ELA, below the state in math for achievement. The next section is growth. Looking at our growth, remember that's multiple years of growth, so 18, 19, and they look at 2021. The purpose of this area is to give schools and districts a single measure that summarizes how rapidly their students are gaining knowledge and skills from year to year. So it's a little different than that achievement piece, which is based on the levels of performance that was attained from that given year. Okay. So you kind of see here our levels of growth for ELA, 73.6, the state was 66.0, mathematics 56.5, state was 66. So again, we're seeing the same trends. ELA is higher, math, we're lower than the state. I'm going to jump to on-track graduation here. The purpose of this area is to give schools and districts an indication of how successful students are achieving educational milestones that predict post-secondary readiness. So the components are chronic absenteeism, which we're doing better than the state. We also have district-wide attendance. Again, we're performing better than the state. Third grade English is involved with this. So 71.3, the state was 58.9. So they just look at achievement on this. And then for 8th grade mathematics, we were 56.4 and the state was 55.3. So we were a little, creeping above the state on that one. And I'm going to talk about target groups a little more in depth because that's a new piece to the report card a little later. Excellent. So this kind of is leading us into those target groups. In the past, we always talked about gaps, right? We have these gaps between different groups. And this is kind of the reasoning why we're not talking about gaps. Because when you look at this, we have two groups and they're both the same. There's no movement on the gap, right? I'm just going to do a couple of these. If kids are doing, one group's doing worse and one is doing better, we're closing the gap. Do we want that? No. But yet our report card is going to improve because we're closing the gap. So, and that's what was kind of happening out there. Here's another one where it's closing over here. Again, worse and same, worse and better. And this is really what you want. You want one group accelerating that growth while the other one's still growing, so that we're closing the gap. That's the only one that would work. So I want to talk a little bit about the target groups, and that's kind of the new piece to this instead of that gap piece. So why was the closing gap omitted? Small schools had some huge fluctuations within this. So depending on your student population, there was huge fluctuations. And it was also, the calculations were really complex. I mean, it took a long time to kind of figure out all the pieces to that and all the multipliers. What does this really mean? And why are we doing this? It's really, you get some stability from year to year by doing this, looking at that lowest quartile, or the lowest 25%. There will always be that lowest quartile of students, meaning it can always be scored. And scoring of this area will use multiple familiar measures. So they'll look at the achievement, the value add for growth, absenteeism, and then it also creates a mini report card for you too, to dig a little deeper into. So this is kind of our target group information that was shown earlier. But when we do look at the target group outcomes, this is designed to help us see our gaps in comparison to the rest of the student body. And it's a little different than what we were doing before. When the most vulnerable students are supported and barriers are removed from learning, all students benefit. So that kind of gets us at that UDL, the Universal Design for Learning, Access for All, and removing barriers. Some of the things that they're looking at, again, it was that achievement, the growth, chronic absenteeism, and graduation and attendance. So these are all those scoring components that go into that target group as well. So it is, again, for like growth, it's based off of a couple of years. So when we're looking at our target group, we don't have target group data for some of our students because it was based off of 18-19. So for our 4th and 5th graders, we don't have that data. Does that make sense? So what do we do about this? Where do we sit? Where are we at? We kind of knew going into this where we had some holes and we had some gaps. So we've been kind of working behind the scenes on some of these things already. The building principals, myself, Allison, Lindsay, we've all kind of been having some conversations. Jim's been there too. About how we can address some of this, right? So next steps. So I just recently read an article in Ed Week that really, you could see on there that math was an issue, right? But even in the article and our internal data as well, we do need to still continue to focus on ELA. It is important. And it really talked about, which we're seeing too, our 2nd and 3rd graders, we really need to focus in on those grades, the students missing 1st and 2nd grade, some of the most important learning years of in their academic careers. So really focusing in on that ELA. The other thing the article talked about is a trend across the nation of middle school math, students going down in middle school math. So those are some huge areas of focus for us as a district. One thing we've done as a district, and we've kind of changed some of the delivery of our interventions in the past. We've had non-certified staff doing interventions. And currently we're utilizing reading specialists for those. When most expert people are providing interventions for students. Focusing in on universal instruction through coaching cycles. When we're doing really good universal instruction, all kids benefit, and that's really where we want the learning to happen. We're focusing in on student-centered coaching. Let's take a mask break. We're focusing on student-centered coaching, so the principals, myself, and the coaches are going to be getting together and doing some professional development on student-centered coaching. So really looking at student data and how we can move students forward based on student data. So the coaching is around moving students. ELA curriculum review with partner districts. So if you've been at some board meetings and curriculum committee meetings, you're aware that we're working with the partner districts around ELA curriculum, looking at the new standards that came out from the state, and then focusing on some common assessment work. And we're starting with the middle school right now and norming our common assessments and making sure that we're teaching to those high standards and making sure our students have access to grade level work. Staff training and data literacy, setting goals, action plans around student data. Our principals are doing an amazing job of doing this work. They are working tirelessly, supporting teachers and really looking at data, making goals and moving students. And we're always circling back is what are students learning and how do you know? And SEL work. It's so important. So really taking time to do those morning meetings and making sure. Jello's happening. All right. And then finally UDL. So we introduced some UDL. We had a presenter come in and speak to the staff around UDL, and we're starting to really dig into that a little bit and really focusing on removing those barriers for them. And math is similar in a lot of ways. New to the district are math interventionists. We haven't had this in the past, so this is something new for the district. So we have a coach and an interventionist in both buildings. We also have a new K-5 through 5th grade math curriculum. So we knew math was an area of a sticking point for us, and we shifted to the Bridges math curriculum. And we could see already in our 3rd grade scores of the last test that we had, forward tests, that we've made a huge amount of growth in math, just in that 3rd grade group. So this is something that we're working on. Keep in mind that we might see a little bit of a dip because it is a new curriculum. They started it last year, our teachers, during COVID, which is a very hands-on curriculum. And this is their first year doing it live with students. Again, the students that are coaching, we're working on that. Next year is our curriculum review for math. So we'll be working with the partner districts around math. We're working on common assessments. We did that work in the summer around common assessments for K-5 through 5th grade math. We're really refining some of our processes around looking at that student data and planning from that student data. And then a lot of trainings again around data literacy and all of that. Our building principals are leading that work with the coaches. We've added the addition of a program called Alex to provide personalized learning for our Glendale students. We're going to continue to focus on student SEL needs and then UDL as well. That's kind of where we're at with this. And again, I do, if you saw the Journal Sentinel article, I really think we need to focus on SEL, continue to look at our internal data, and just be cautious with some of this data.
So like for the Journal Sentinel article, can you, when was that from? Or?
This morning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I might even have a link that I could share with you.
Yeah.
Because it was in one of our updates.
Okay.
So originally DPI did not want to do report cards. They did ask for a waiver, but it was denied.
Do districts get a heads up that the report card is going to change before the issuance of the report card? So our districts know ahead of time it's going to look different. So there were no surprises in how it looked or anything like that.
No.
Okay.
Yes, many hours at CISA. All of it from Paula Kaiser, who was fantastic. Any other questions?
Thank you. Well, no,
I'm
but
like,
I know,
I'm like, I
no, but it's such a long meeting. I'd love to talk to you more
She's
about the
so different.
UDL rollout, just offline in general. I'm just curious. So, add it to the list of things I want to talk to you about.
We have like hours.
We're gonna have a retreat.
Yeah. On the testing, UDL, please, thank you.
your scare measure. Jeez, we're kidding. All right, let's keep going. Thank you, Jenica. Thank you. I miss your dogs barking. Someone said that today. On a different Zoom.
Okay, so item F is committee purpose and structure.
So Ms. Vukovich, I added that one. As you had mentioned adding that one, so I'm just gonna kind of let you take the.
So back when I first started the board, we had committees. And then because we had so many new people, it was like I was new, Gary was new. We decided to go in the committee of the whole for the simple fact, so we could learn committees. Then last year, we went back to committees. And the reason for the committees is to give recommendations to the board. School board meetings are not to hash out the policy. The committee meetings are to hash out the policy. That is when you have interaction with anybody and everybody who is on, if you have an opinion, because the opinions that happen in this committee meeting may flip what we need to know. And I'll give you an example. Say if we were getting ready to change a curriculum on a meeting or a curriculum for math, that would go through the curriculum committee. What happens if there's 10 people who don't like that process, don't like it, want to know more about it? That is where it would be in the curriculum committee. But if it already has been decided that this particular thing is going to pass, it's already in front of the board. We have to vote on it one way or the other, just like the committee has sent it in. So school board, and the way I see this, and people can disagree, but the way I see it is most of the work should be hashed out in committees. Now, I know that, how do you figure it out? Because last year we were having committee meetings that were like, if it was about the band or something, it was in curriculum, and then it was in policy, and it was in 50 other different, and you had no clue where to actually go. So one of the things that I think Ben and I were talking about in our meeting is, first of all, defining what goes in each committee. First of all, like, obviously policy is kind of self-explanatory. Anytime there is something that's going to change within a policy, or if Jim wants to buy something, that's kind of self-explanatory because it's buildings and grounds. The ones that kind of get a little bit kind of a little bit iffy is the curriculum and then finance. And I think and we're not going to decide that tonight, is that we need to, as a board, figure out what topics go under what committee. Some people are very interested in my favorite committee, buildings and grounds, and they want to come and listen to what we're doing about air quality and stuff. But they know that that committee is usually a certain day. They know to go look on that agenda and say, is there anything I'm really interested in? And they know to go to that meeting. But if I say air quality is finance, you're going to be a little confused because we're buying something. So I think if we as a committee or as a board can figure out where things go in category and put it on the website, like if this is about this, now sometimes things are going to cross because they will have to. If we're doing buildings and he says we need carpeting, we might have to go to finance to say, finance, can we afford this? But for the general sense of everything, it should be pretty plain. But those committees can't be rushed. They can't be just an hour. Or, there should be some time, and it shouldn't be back to back like committee meetings, because we need time to hash out. Sometimes it's going to be a small thing and nobody wants to talk about it. But other times we need to hash it out because that is where the hashing out of all this stuff needs to go. The school board, and this is my opinion, and you will get it, the school board meeting is for when we have hashed it out. We have a policy that we're going to give. We will be the same, after we have a policy, we'll have the backup and the presentations and all that for the other board members who are not on that committee. But at the end of the day, the back and forth and trying to hash it out, that needs to be done in the committee. And that's where I'm asking parents, after we figure out our own stuff, because we have to figure out our own stuff first and how these committees are working. Give this particular process a chance, because that is where you have a lot more robust conversations. You can say what you don't like, and then that committee can actually say, you know what, you're right, let's take this out of here, or let's put this in. But at the school board meeting, we're already looking at a policy that they approved. And if it comes up in the school board meeting, we're not getting any work done because it's gonna go back to committee for more discussion. And then when it comes back up, we might be discussing it at the school board meeting again. And that happened with our visit participation policy, where we brought it back 5 different times because we had discussions here when we should have been having discussions in the committees. So that is why I asked to bring it up. I don't know if everybody agrees or disagrees, and I guess this is where the discussion comes in. But I think if we got to the point that we could solidify what department each committee is in, make sure that our agendas, at least for committees, can be up way ahead of time, we will have a more fluid process.
Agreed. I just think that there's so much redundancy within the committee work. It is just an absolute human energy suck. And for someone who doesn't have a lot of time, I think that that's very important that and it's going to take some work to figure out who goes where. But there have been so many conversations in so many committees about the same thing that it just made no sense to me. And then to come back here and talk about it again made no sense to me. So if we can clear that up and do it quickly, I completely support that.
And I'm actually looking at trying to do this between now and our next board meeting, so we can at least solidify what's going on, and then we can start the process in January. So because I don't know if we're having that many committee meetings in December, but in January, we can start it up, and then we can also have time where we can get each other's schedules to make sure that we're not blocking out. Like I usually have my committee meetings on the 4th of Thursday of the month. I have to work with him because he does have swimming at times, and that may move it. But generally, we're gonna try to keep that consistency. So I know that, policy is on the 4th Thursday of the month. And if you're a policy freak like Danielle is, you want to be in those board meetings, you know what I mean? And then you can have a robust conversation and it's not cut off, and we're not doing, those are the meetings that are supposed to be long, no offense. But these ones should be just for business, get to the point, because we've already discussed it, get the business and go.
We just need to figure out which committee to
right.
talk about it.
Okay, but to Molly's point, I would say, I think that there may be some items that should come, for example, the Peggy Black proposal for strategic planning came to the board first for a discussion. Then it may go back to, or maybe it'll come back to the board, but sometimes the conversations are redundant because we don't have the input of the full board. Like, so I wonder if there are some items that come to the board first before they go to committee, so committee can consider viewpoints or the discussion that was had. I just wonder if all items belong in a committee first, and if some of the redundancy stems from starting in a committee, then coming to the board and finding out, nope, that's not gonna fly, and then going back to the committee and then.
But here's my thing, and this is where I bring in like other branches of government. other branches of government trust the people that are on their committees. They give them a synopsis of what it is that is on this committee. If you have questions, you can ask that. But there has to be some trust factors that Ben, like when we policy, Ben and I are going to try to do the best we can. If you have questions about it, you can always ask.
Come to the meeting.
Or come to the meeting. Because I have gone to finance committee meetings because I'm like, I'm a little interested in that. Yes, you are not a part of that committee when you come to the policy committee. But you came to our policy and asked a bunch of questions because you wanted to know. And we treat you just like everybody else, where we let you talk.
It was just a question. I'm not saying I have the answer to that.
I just don't think it should go, because that still defeats the purpose if it's coming here and then getting assigned.
But
Even if we put on like a website, or if we put on a website something that's gonna be on like topics of discussion, and that can be just added in, like, we're gonna talk about the ban, or we're gonna talk about COVID. That's gonna be on this committee, so people can see what committee it's gonna go in. And obviously it's gotta get tweaked, but
Yeah.
you can always go and look. I think I wanna ask, you guys usually look at the website for your information, correct? And if you saw a whole list of stuff that showed, like, if you wanted to talk about math curriculum, and you saw that curriculum was there, but we were changing the math policy. And then we said, this could be math and policy, and we could, explain that. You would know which one you wanted to go to or what you had to do.
I think it comes down to the agenda, and I agree with you, the agendas need to come out sooner, and if possible, they should be sent out in like a district communication and that says, but I don't know if we do this, I've asked this before, if the committees, if we notice the committees to the community to say, this is our agenda, but it still needs to, we need to give more notice if you want to encourage public participation in the committee meetings would be one of my points. And then weighing the idea of set dates again, so that it's not so people can know when we're meeting regularly, versus weighing the idea of like accessible times for committee meetings, so it's not just always at night. I don't know. These are just considerations I would put out there.
So obviously, this isn't all going to be solved tonight.
Right.
It's just an introductory conversation.
Yeah.
So then what would be our next step in us getting together? Because for procedural reasons, this would be a board meeting. We don't, so would we meet as like, so we would have to meet separately to talk about this. So it sounds like our next step is to come up with a date that works for all of us so we can hash some of this out. Is that correct?
I'm with that, because if we can do, we did so many other board meetings for no reason whatsoever. So this one is a very,
It feels like
important.
governance retreat type work that I've been asking to have be ongoing.
So then I'd like to suggest that we, not tonight, but we come up with a common date where we can, for those who are interested of us, get together and hash this out before the next week, before the January meeting. If that works, or I know the holidays are super busy, so it might be difficult for all of us to get together, but I think that's what our next step would be, is to get a meeting together.
and
to
I would
start talking
actually
about that.
ask that meeting is happening before our next board meeting, so we can implement it.
That's good.
We're implementing
It's 4
policy
weeks.
that's gonna require a couple of meetings to do, that's the only problem.
Well, it doesn't have to be a policy, it can just be something that we draft as a process, like.
Right,
these are
it's
the
not a
things that
pro-
go
it's
on
a
this
process.
committee, and
Yeah.
dates certain and finding.
Yep.
So, yeah, it doesn't have to be. So it could be retreat like.
Okay.
Thanks,
And with
Molly,
this,
for
I will
pushing
make
that along.
it happen, or with
Gonna
my
miss
time,
that.
I'll make it happen.
No, you're not.
It's very-
Yes, I am.
Who's
All
doing
right.
the doodle
I
poll?
just, I want to, look, I understand the frustration, and frankly, I'm sure that I'm targeted much for that hire. But I want to point out one thing, and that is that whatever action we take has to be balanced, has to be targeted, has to be precise. And it had to give the public confidence that we're not simply, delegating our jobs, that all 5 of us are being active. And that's what I'm hearing, that there's a be a process that we somehow make sure that, the 5 of us are involved in. But the problem with having committees is that committees have two people and scheduled time, and not everyone in the public can make those committees. So that's why we have big board meetings. Sometimes I have to say the same thing twice. I hate to say it, but we're politicians and, we're elected, and that's something that, we have to do. So I am all in favor of trying to, come up with, some guardrail, streamline the process. I'm just saying that we are the government, we are the people who run the school district, and we have to be accountable. We can't simply say, well, we're only gonna, talk about things, over here and agree on things over here. I think that abrogates our responsibility. And I know that's not what anyone's saying. I'm more saying this just for anyone who's listening to this, that they don't think that that's what the goal of this is. Because I certainly don't think that's what the goal of it should be. And I can't imagine anyone will want to do that. We have to be, we have to do what we can to, be accessible to the public, to make things more efficient for board members, right? And to get things done quicker. I completely understand all those goals. I just want to make sure that we don't make it look like we're not fully invested because we're trying
Here's
to
the
rush
thing.
things through.
Every other government entity works this way. It happens this way. This is how every single government entity happens. And I'm a little bit weird about answering school board emails with a direct answer, but I usually always say, thank you, I've read them, I read them all, and I usually respond if I've seen it. If they want to talk to me, I have plenty of people who call and ask me personal questions. That is what that's for. We are the elected officials that if you need to talk to me, I should be answering your phone calls. But on the other hand, sometimes, and I would say it personally, like sometimes I feel like it's disingenuous where we are like asking and not doing our jobs like we're supposed to do in the committees and putting this farce that we're really, let's do our job in the committee because it's supposed to be done there. And not just because it's, oh, if we take a lot of information on our school board, it looks like we're doing it or we're doing more. We're not. We're just moving it from a regular school board meeting to a committee meeting, getting facts and hammering it out and streamlining the issue. I don't mind being in a meeting for 4 hours. I don't have an issue with that if we're getting something done. I could be here until 10, 11 o'clock. But if it's just to reiterate things over and over and over again for no apparent reason, then that's a waste of everybody's time.
I personally don't think that that's the case. I mean, and just to be frank, if that is the case, then we should be sticking with the committee of the whole structure because that would streamline it. But we chose.
It wouldn't streamline it because we're seeing the reason we moved is because we're on a committee of the whole. We have a committee of the whole meeting. We see the whole school board meeting. Then we go back and see the whole school morning did on our school board meeting. And that is the fact.
If you have a committee meeting 2 weeks before the board meeting, you ask a couple questions, you say, okay, oh, that sounds good, great. If you've made up your mind then and you don't give the critical thought later on to what happens down the road, you may say, oh, wait, I forgot to ask about X, or no, that's not gonna work. Or
there's a difference, but that if you bring something up, that is a question, like, I didn't think about that, and that may be a question, but we hammer stuff out right here and there. Most of the time, we're gonna hammer stuff out, and if you have an extra question, Danielle does it all the time where she had, no, and I'm not saying it's bad, but she has, like, when we were doing policy, she hammered us on different questions. Then she had some follow-up questions, and she emailed me. I answered some of it. It didn't completely satisfy her, but she brought up the question tonight, got somewhat of an answer, and we kept moving them. It wasn't like a whole new discussion.
You're just encouraging robust participation in the committee meetings to help streamline and increase efficiency during a board meeting, not to chill participation or to
Not
say
to
it can't
chill.
happen, but to increase efficiency. That's what
It's
I'm
just
hearing.
being
No, I
moved from
understand
one
that's the goal.
spot to the other.
No, I understand that's well, I just don't entirely hear that. I mean, and I think that there's frustration with what people are asking. And I would just point out that, you know, we've got a relatively young board. There's gonna be a lot of questions that get asked. And I don't like pointing to someone saying, that question isn't a good question. You should have asked that at this point. You should have asked.
Or we could have an onboarding so we could
So.
really,
But, and that's why we have to have that meeting, and that's why we're going to go hash this out in a separate meeting.
Bring some additional agenda items for governance, if you'd like. Call it a retreat.
Okay.
Quarterly retreat.
Well, that's another good place
I've been
for it.
pushing for that. I mean, that's all I'm saying.
All right, then moving along, item G, statewide education conference.
I'm sure you guys all are excited to go. So I just wanted to put out a feeler to see who was interested. It's in Milwaukee, so it's easy. I don't know who typically goes in the past. Because
I go as the WASB board member, I mean, the voting for this, so I always go.
Lindsay and I can work on registration.
No, Karen does it.
Oh, you do it? Okay, so Tamika,
Yeah,
Danielle,
Karen.
you said yes, right? Yep. Danielle? Yes.
It's very interesting though. It's, you learn a lot.
I'm obviously going.
And it's a person this year,
Okay.
which it wasn't last time.
Yeah, which is better. Yeah.
And for our newer members, I encourage both of you guys to go and just feel out something. There's great topics, legal stuff that is really helpful. That you can learn a lot on. So.
That's a tough week for you. It's final exam week and I have to.
Yeah.
There is one topic that will be coming up and I wanted to put your brain on it. WASB has, I know you saw that, that email where they have suspended with the National School Board. That is a bigger issue. And I'm not speaking for this board, but speaking on how I've seen this district and what our board represents. This is a huge thing for us, and I think we need to pay a little more attention to it, and it will be brought up. And I've talked to John Ashley Ashford about it. I don't think that WASB aligns with what our school district would be aligning with at this time, especially with our mission and what we do. So we need to have it. I think it should be put on it.
Will we discuss the resolutions? Could it just be added to that part, that be or wrapped into that discussion possibly?
Yeah, because I think that is definitely, and the resolutions will come out, I think, in December. We usually get them around about now, and we can talk about them on our December meeting.
Nicolay Partner Schools update.
So buildings and grounds update, just letting you know, we're still looking into current costs. We'll continue to provide updates on that potential partnership. 22-23 or 23-24 calendar. So Partner Schools in Nicolay have talked through a draft, and that's just including holidays, first day of school, the joint district partnership day in February. So just the real basic pieces so that those are aligned for families. Last year, you guys approved a 22-23 calendar with Dr. Moser that was similar. It was just that basic outline. So I'm going to be working with the administrative team and with the association and getting some teacher input around some changes to parent-teacher conferences, as well as looking at adding some additional professional development for 22-23, and actually looking at making some changes to parent-teacher conferences for this spring. I have like 4 or 5 options out to the admin team, and then I'll discuss with the association because they were scheduled back-to-back nights again, which was really challenging in the fall. So we're looking to just make some adjustments with minimal change to like family calendars, so that there wouldn't be like, because there's already that Friday off where there's conferences, but right now it's one night, a full day of kids, another night, and that's just really tough for staff. So we're looking to make a tweak to spring conferences, and then we'll be bringing more information on all of that in calendar in December.
To the board or to committee?
Probably to the board.
Okay.
Since it's an approved calendar, it would just be adjusted a day or two.
Okay.
And then snow days, I'm hoping to have a discussion to figure out which committee that goes into. Or if it's gonna be too late, if it's gonna snow. But basically the partner schools and myself, when we talked, we're all feeling, and I don't know if we've had a discussion about this in the past, between snow days and using virtual.
I believe we approved it, I believe it was a.
We
approved
addressed
under
it
Dr.
last
Mosher.
year.
I'll have
There's
to
a-
look into it, because the
our
general
policy.
consensus, and hopefully it's aligned to the partner schools, was the first 2 days are just snow days. And then if you do anything virtual, you have to have plenty of advance notice, so kids can get tech, and it probably mostly be like the cold days, where you can kind of see that polar vortex or whatever coming. So there'd be lots of rain.
I believe it's approving virtual days for. snow days.
Yeah, we ended up doing synchronous.
I don't remember if we did it for going forward, or we just did last year.
I don't know.
For every snow day?
We did, over here, we did asynchronous. work.
Yeah,
I mean, did you have a plan for this year though? If there's a snow day?
I don't know if we put a time frame on approving the policy. It was like forward looking. So, I mean, bring it.
So yeah, something to look into, because most districts kind of agree that at least that first 1 or 2 should just be snow days.
Yeah.
Like emotionally, you know,
One-
Sure.
for staff and students versus like right away.
I
So
think-
we'll have to talk about that more.
I'm sorry.
Especially when it gets to the point you have to start, depending on what it is, if you have to start making up classes, you do not want to do that. So,
So
And
we've
we
got a
had a
couple
year.
built in. Yeah.
So was it the year before the pandemic, the winter before, that we had all those snow days and they were all like at the last minute? They weren't
Yeah,
the
that was
first half of the year.
horrible.
And so, you know, for a situation like that, I honestly, we weren't virtual ready. I mean, having a virtual option for, you know, going beyond what we allotted is, I mean, definitely we should be doing that. If you can't have a snow day, rather than other options.
So I'll dig into that, find out what you guys
If it
discussed
doesn't
around that.
Okay, then I think we have one more thing. We'll get to visitor participation.
Hang in
I'll
there,
skip
guys.
it. School board notice of vacancy. Well, in the April election, there are 2 vacancies that are open. Ms. Krychowiak, did you have anything to,
Say,
yeah?
I'm not running again. There's nothing else to say.
You don't have
So,
a big speech?
Nope, not at this time.
not yet.
Maybe the last board meeting, but not tonight.
if you are interested in pursuing the vacancy, be an incumbent or otherwise, obviously, please reach out to Karen. We'll set everyone up with the forms necessary to do so.
By the way, I am running.
Yeah, that was in the notes, right?
Just-
I just wanted it to be their call if they said
Oh,
anything.
okay.
I wasn't gonna push that.
Okay, change aside for visitor participation. Visitors may speak on a non-agenda item at this time. State law and/or board policy may limit school board's response. And I would always start, well, I shouldn't always start, but I want to start in case Ms. Penning-Cross has anything to add from the foundation.
May I ask a question real quick? Wasn't that supposed to be put on the agenda that she would automatically do the
Follow.
We
foundation?
just talked about that actually again.
So part of one of our policies has the format for the board meeting in it.
The agenda?
So,
We have to change the policy.
so we have to take that out. So I'm bringing that.
Why
to the
would it
policy.
when it can just be new business? Because technically it's new business every time.
Yeah, but the way we've been setting up now, new businesses like voting on stuff, and yeah, we'll figure it out. Yeah.
Or put it in a discussion.
Okay, Carl Bennington Cross, 99 West Glacier Road, Glendale, Wisconsin. RQ 217. I would point out that this meeting did not go long because of visitor participation.
Oh, I've been saying that, Carl. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so from the foundation, this is the only thing I have to say. At our last meeting, because I don't know if this requires board approval, we finally passed a motion to just give the district the money we have for the family emergency fund. We have about 5,000 plus whatever we've raised. I said, it's gonna be somewhere between like, maybe around $10,000, rather than continuing to do it as a grant process, which can create the impression that foundation board members are deciding who gets emergency funds. We want to do away with any possibility that that's how it could be perceived, because that's not how it works. And we just want to dump the money to the district and trust your staff to do what's right with it. So I do not know if that requires board approval, but we have passed that motion, and our wonderful treasurer, Sean McMahon, is figuring out how much he's going to cut the check for. So I will leave that in your good hands to decide what to do with that. Super excited. We finally got, I think it's gonna happen in the spring, UWM graduate students are gonna be assigned shortly to help us update our website. So we hope that's really gonna help us enable donation and fundraising. We hope it'll also be a platform just to celebrate our school district. So that's all I've got. Speaking of celebrating, I just want to tell you, the 6th grade dean is killing it. I've got a 6th grader, Mr. Berkowski, Jojo Wiseman, Ms. Young, Mr. Conrad, Ms. Prager. They are just killing it. While I was at this meeting, I got a voicemail from Ms. Young clarifying for Nick what some homework assignment was. And I've gotten emails from teachers at 7, 8 at night. We're all feeling bad staying here. The reason I stayed is because I was like, oh my God, if a teacher's gonna call me at 7:30, I can skip it through a school board meeting. So I just giving them the shout out they deserve. Your teachers are really kicking it, and they really need our love and just daily expressions of gratitude.
Okay,
And
thank you
I-
very much. I appreciate
Thank you for
it.
that.
Does anyone else have anything from online? I don't see any hands here. Okay, then no one want to take their head off as a board member? Seeing nothing, going once, going twice, and I'm closing visitor participation. And on that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So second.
And a voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
Thank you.
We are adjourned. Because I haven't done it in a long time.